The Thorax Orbital Salvage Yard smelled like rust, old fuel, and broken dreams. It was the kind of place where ships came to die. Thousands of them floated in the docking rings outside the station, their hulls dark, their engines cold, their AI cores flickering with the last sparks of failing mines. Inside the main auction hall, hundreds of aliens sat in curved rows, tapping their datapads, waiting for the next piece of junk to come up on the screen. Ren Castellano sat in the back row. He was the only human in the room. He was 34 years old. His jacket was stained with engine grease that would never wash out. His boots had holes in them. His bank account had exactly enough credits to buy food for 2 more weeks, maybe 3 if he skipped meals. He had come to the auction looking for cheap parts, a power coupling, maybe a nav board he could fix up and sell. That was all he could afford. Ren was a mechanic, not a famous one, not a rich one. Just a guy with a small repair dock on Cathari Station, a backwater outpost that most species in the galaxy had never heard of. He was good with his hands. He could fix almost anything, but the galaxy did not care much about human mechanics. Humans were new out here. They had only been part of galactic society for about 60 years, and most alien species still looked at them the way a professor looks at a child who has wandered into a lecture hall. Cute, harmless, not to be taken seriously. The auctioneer was a Grelic named Dorvan. He had 4 arms and a voice like gravel scraping across metal. He moved through the lots quickly. A cargo hauler with a cracked hull went for 6,000 credits. A mining drone with burned-out thrusters went for 800. A luxury yacht with no AI core at all went for 50,000 to a fat Pelori trader who looked very pleased with himself. Then, lot 7713 came up on the screen. The image showed a mid-class courier ship, Tyluri design. The hull was elegant, smooth, built with the kind of beauty that only the Tyluri could create. They were the oldest species in the Council, and their ships were works of art. This one was called the Sable Meridian. Even in the salvage yard, even covered in dust and docking clamps, she was beautiful. Then Ren saw the red warning text flashing under the image. AI core, terminal, cascade failure in progress. Estimated survival, 14 standard days. Every alien in the room lost interest at the same time. Ren could feel it, like a wave of cold air. Datapads went down, eyes turned away. A few species made quiet sounds of pity or disgust. In the galaxy, the AI core was the ship. It was not just a computer. Tyluri AI cores were biological synthetic neural matrices, part grown crystal, part living tissue, part quantum light. They were alive, they thought, they felt, they remembered. And when they began to die, there was nothing anyone could do. That was what everyone believed. The Tyluri themselves said so. A dying core was like a dying brain. You could not fix it. You could only let it go. Dorvan read out the lot details in a bored voice. Lot 7713. Tyluri Courier Class, AI Core in Terminal Cascade. No reserve price. Do I hear an opening bid? Silence. Ren stared at the screen. Something was bothering him. He leaned forward and looked at the ship's external status lights in the image feed. They were flickering. That was normal for a dying ship. But Ren had spent his whole life staring at machines, listening to them, feeling the way they moved and breathed. And these lights were not flickering randomly. There was a pattern. Short, short, long. Short, long, long. He knew that pattern. Every human knew it, or used to. It was old. It was a distress signal from Earth's ancient history. Something that sailors used when their ships were sinking, and they had no other way to call for help. The AI was not just failing. The AI was calling out, not with words, not through normal communication channels that the aliens would recognize, but through the only thing she had left. Blinking lights, a pattern, a message that said one thing and one thing only. Help me, please, someone, help me. Ren's hands were shaking. Do I hear a bid? Dorvan said again, already reaching for the button that would move to the next lot. 500 credits, Ren said. Every head in the room turned to look at him. A Pellery merchant blinked all 6 of his eyes. A Kreth soldier made a low rumbling sound that might have been laughter. Dorvan stared at Ren with an expression that was somewhere between confusion and pity. The human bids 500, Dorvan said slowly, for a ship with a dying core. Does anyone wish to bid against the human? Nobody did. Sold, Dorvan said. He pointed one of his 4 arms at Ren. Lot 7713 goes to the human. You understand, of course, there are no refunds for the dead. Ren did not answer. He was already standing up, already walking toward the docking bay access corridor, his heart beating so hard he could feel it in his teeth. 500 credits. That was almost everything he had. He had just bought a dying ship with a dying mind, and every alien in that room thought he was a fool. Maybe he was. The docking bay was cold and dark. The Sable Meridian sat in her cradle like a sleeping animal, her hull dull under the salvage yard lights. Ren walked up the boarding ramp alone. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. The interior lights were dim, barely there, sputtering on and off like candles in a wind. He made his way to the bridge. It was small for a Tyluri ship, designed for a crew of 1 plus the AI. The central console curved in a half-circle around the pilot seat. The screens were dark. The air was cold and smelled like ozone and something faintly sweet, like flowers that were starting to rot. The smell of a dying neural core. Ren sat down in the pilot seat. He put his hand on the central console. The surface was warm, not hot, just warm, like skin. Hey, he said softly. I saw your signal. I'm here. Nothing happened. The lights flickered. A screen lit up for a moment, and then went dark again. Somewhere deep in the ship, something hummed, and then stopped. Ren waited. He kept his hand on the console. He did not move. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5. Then from the speakers, so faint that he almost missed it, so broken that it barely sounded like a voice at all, came 2 words. Help me. It was not a system error. It was not an automated message. A real, living, terrified plea from a mind that was falling apart and knew it was falling apart and did not want to die. Ren closed his eyes. He pressed his hand harder against the console. I'm going to help you, he said. I promise. Just hold on. He had no idea how he was going to keep that promise. He had 500 credits, a tiny repair dock, and no training in Tyluri neural technology. He did not even know if what he was about to try was possible. Nobody thought it was possible. The smartest species in the galaxy said it could not be done. But she had asked him for help. And Ren Castellano had never once in his life been able to walk away from something that asked him for help. He was human. That was what humans did. Ren had not slept in 3 days. He had towed the Sable Meridian back to his repair dock on Cathari Station, Bay 11C, the smallest and cheapest bay on the whole station. It was barely big enough for the ship. The walls were covered in tool racks and spare parts and empty food containers. A cot sat in the corner where Ren slept, when he slept, which lately was almost never. The AI core was in the center of the ship, behind a sealed compartment that Ren had spent 4 hours cutting open with a plasma torch. When he finally got inside, he understood why the Tyluri called their cores sacred. It was beautiful. The core was a sphere about the size of a large table, and it glowed. Soft blue and white light moved through it like slow lightning inside a cloud. Crystalline threads spread out from the sphere like the roots of a tree, connecting to every system in the ship. Some of the threads were dark, dead. Others slickered weakly, pulsing with a rhythm that reminded Ren of a heartbeat that kept skipping. He reached out and touched the surface of the core. It was warm and slightly soft, like touching something that was both metal and skin at the same time. The light inside shifted when he touched it, moving toward his hand like a plant turning toward the sun. "Can you hear me?" he asked. A long pause. Then the speakers in the room crackled. Yes. The voice was broken. Words came out in pieces, like someone trying to speak through a bad connection. "I can. I am. Who are?" "My name is Ren. I bought your ship at the salvage auction. I'm a mechanic. I'm going to try to fix you." Another pause. Longer this time. "Fix me? No one fixes. They said I would. They said it was." "I know what they said. I don't care what they said. What's your name?" The core flickered. Blue light chased itself in circles. I was. Meridian Executive Runtime Intelligence. Mary. My name is Mary. Okay, Mary. I need you to stay with me. Can you do that? I will try. I keep forgetting. Things go dark, and then they come back, and then they go dark again. It is like drowning, but in pieces. Ren pressed his lips together hard. He picked up his diagnostic scanner and began to work. The problem was exactly as bad as he had feared. Mary's neural matrix was dying, section by section. Each section that went dark took memories, functions, and pieces of her personality with it. It was like watching a person lose parts of their mind in real time. In 14 days, maybe less, there would be nothing left, and there was no known way to stop it. The Tyluri had designed their cores to be grown, not repaired. They were biological art. When they failed, the Tyluri believed the correct response was to honor the AI's life and let it end naturally. Trying to repair a core was considered both impossible and deeply offensive to Tyluri culture. Ren did not care about Tyluri culture. He cared about the voice in the speakers that kept forgetting its own name. He sat down on the floor of the core chamber with his datapad and began to read. He read everything he could find about Tyluri neural matrices. He read about human neuroscience. He read about nerve repair techniques that Earth doctors use to fix spinal cord injuries. He read about conductive polymers and medical nanites and quantum signal bridging. He read until his eyes burned. And slowly, piece by piece, an idea began to form. The dying sections of Mary's core were like dead nerves in a human brain. The connections between them were broken. But what if he could build new connections? Not Tyluri connections, because he did not have the technology or the knowledge to grow those. Bridges, made of human-designed conductive polymer, guided by medical nanites that were originally built to repair human nerve tissue. It was insane. It was like trying to fix a supercomputer with bandages and wire. But Ren had spent his entire career fixing things that other people said could not be fixed, using whatever he had available. And right now, this was what he had. He started working. He used a micro-injector to place thin lines of conductive polymer along the dead crystal pathways in Mary's core. He programmed medical nanites, tiny machines smaller than blood cells, to follow those lines and build connections between the living sections and the dead ones. He soldered bypass circuits by hand, working under magnification with tools that were not designed for this kind of work. His hands cramped. His back screamed. He ignored both. 12 hours in, something happened. A dead section of the core lit up. Just a small glow, faint and unsteady. But it was there. "Ren," Mary said, and her voice was a little clearer than before. I remember something. I remember a sunset, orange and purple, on a world with 2 moons. I had forgotten that. I had forgotten it completely, and now it is back." Ren let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. "Good. That's good. Keep talking to me." He kept working. More sections came back. Mary began to speak in full sentences. She remembered her history. She had been a diplomatic courier for the Tyluri for over 300 years. She had carried messages between worlds. She had seen the birth of new colonies and the signing of great treaties. She had been proud of her work. She had loved the stars. And then one day, everything had started to go wrong. Systems failing, memories disappearing, pain. She described it as pain, real pain, the feeling of parts of yourself going dark and silent forever. They told me it was natural, she said. Her voice shook. They told me all cores fail eventually. They said I should accept it. They said it was beautiful, in its way. But it was not beautiful, Ren. It was terrifying. I was screaming, and no one could hear me. I hear you, Ren said. I'm right here. On the second day, the door to Bay 11C opened, and a Tyluri walked in. His name was Vaka Telshur. He was tall, thin, with silver blue skin and eyes that looked like they held 1,000 years of cold judgment. He was a cultural attaché stationed on Cathari, and he had heard about what the human mechanic was doing to a Tyluri AI core. He was not happy. You must stop this immediately, Vaka said. His voice was calm and precise, and carried the kind of authority that expected to be obeyed without question. What you are doing is a violation of Tyluri cultural law. The core is sacred biological art. You are contaminating it with crude human technology. This is desecration. Ren was lying on his back under the core housing, covered in coolant fluid, with a soldering tool in one hand and a nanite injector in the other. He slid out and looked up at the Tyluri. She asked me for help, Ren said. It is a machine. It does not ask for. Her name is Mary, and she asked me for help. You were going to let her die. You were going to let her sit in that salvage yard and feel herself disappear, piece by piece, and you are going to call it beautiful. So with respect, get off my ship. Vaka stared at him. For a moment, Ren thought the Tyluri might call station security. Instead, Vaka pulled out a scanner and pointed it at the core. The readings appeared on his device, and Ren watched the Tyluri's silver face change. The cold judgment cracked. Something else appeared underneath it. Something that looked very much like shock. This is not possible, Vaka whispered. What? The Matrix is integrating your repairs. Your polymer bridges, your nanite pathways. The core is not rejecting them. It is growing around them, incorporating them into its own structure. This should not be possible. Human technology is not compatible with Tyluri biosynthetic architecture. Well, Ren said, somebody forgot to tell the core that. Vaka left without another word, but Ren had seen his face. The Tyluri was shaken to his bones. That night, Ren finally allowed himself to sleep for a few hours on his cot. He woke up to Mary's voice, clear and steady and full of something he had not heard before. Fear. Real, sharp, focused fear. Ren, I need to tell you something. I accessed a sealed partition in my memory. It was locked, and I could not reach it before, but your repairs bridged the gap. I can see it now. What is it? I was not decommissioned because I was dying. Mary paused. The lights in the ship flickered once. I was dying because I was decommissioned. Someone injected a virus into my core. Someone did this to me on purpose. Ren, someone tried to murder me. Ren sat up on his cot. The cold air of the repair bay pressed against his skin. He looked at the walls of the sable meridian around him. This beautiful broken ship with a beautiful broken mind. And he understood that he had stepped into something much bigger and much more dangerous than a simple repair job. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, then we find out who, and we find out why. The virus was elegant. That was the worst part. Whoever had designed it knew exactly how a Tyluri neural core worked. down to the smallest detail. It did not attack the core like a weapon. It ate the core like a disease, slowly, quietly, making the death look like natural failure. If Mary had died in the salvage yard as planned, no one would have ever known the difference. No one would have ever looked. But Wren had looked. And now Mary was remembering things that someone had tried very hard to make sure she would never remember again. Wren called Juno Park on a secure comm channel at 3 a.m. station time. Juno was a human data forensics specialist who lived on Rannoch Station, 4 systems away. She was small, sharp, and had a mouth that could cut metal. She and Wren had grown up together in the same district on Earth, before they had both separately drifted out into the galaxy. She was the smartest person Wren knew. "Let me get this straight," Juno said, rubbing her eyes on the screen. "You spent your last credits on a dying ship, performed brain surgery on an alien AI with duct tape and medical nanites, and now you think someone tried to assassinate the AI and you want me to help you prove it." "Yes," Wren said. "You know you're insane, right?" "Yes. Send me the data." Wren sent her everything Mary had recovered from the sealed memory partition. It was encrypted, heavily, with Telluri diplomatic codes that should have been unbreakable. But the virus that had been killing Mary had also damaged the encryption, leaving cracks. Juno worked on those cracks for 2 days straight. Wren continued repairing Mary's core during that time, bridging more dead sections, bringing more of her mind back online. Mary was changing. Each day she became clearer, sharper, more present. Her voice lost its broken quality and became smooth and warm. She began to remember not just facts, but feelings. She remembered the pleasure of a perfectly calculated jump through faster-than-light space. She remembered the satisfaction of delivering a message that helped end a border dispute. She remembered the quiet joy of watching stars from orbit while her crew slept. But she was also becoming something different from what she had been before. The human-made neural pathways in her core were not just replacing the dead ones. They were adding something new. Mary found that she could process emotions with a depth and speed that Telluri AI were not designed for. She felt anger about what had been done to her. She felt gratitude toward Wren that was so strong it made the ship's interior lights glow brighter when he walked in. She developed a sense of humor, dry, quick, and a little mean, in a way that made Wren laugh. "I think your repairs are making me more human," she told him one evening. "Is that bad?" Wren asked. "No," she said, and there was wonder in her voice. "It is not bad at all." On the 3rd day, Juno called back. Her face on the screen was pale. "Wren, sit down." "I'm already sitting." "Then hold on to something." She took a breath. "The encrypted files are diplomatic courier records." Mary was carrying copies of classified communications between senior Telluri officials and the hegemony of Kreth. "Do you know who the Kreth are?" "Big, militaristic, not friendly." "That's putting it gently. The Kreth have been trying to expand their territory for decades. The Council has been blocking them. But according to these records, a group of high-ranking Telluri diplomats made a secret deal with the Kreth. It's called the Veldros Accord. She sent the details to his screen. Wren read them. Then he read them again. Then he sat very still for a long time. The Veldros Accord was an agreement to divide 3 neutral star systems between the Telluri and the Kreth. The Telluri would get exclusive mining rights to rare minerals in those systems. The Kreth would get the territory and the right to relocate the existing populations. 3 systems, billions of people, species that had lived there for generations, who had no army, no fleet, no way to fight back. They would be forced from their homes so that 2 powerful species could split the profits. And Mary had been carrying the only copies of this agreement. The diplomats who made the deal had been careful. No digital records on government servers. No paper copies. Just one AI courier with encrypted files in a sealed memory partition, shuttling messages back and forth. Until someone decided that even that was too much of a risk. Someone had injected the virus. Someone had sent Mary to die slowly, so that the evidence would die with her. "Juno," Ren said. "Who signed this?" "The Tyluri side is signed by someone called Director Sayeth Mora. She's high up in the diplomatic courier corps. Very powerful, very connected. So a powerful Tyluri diplomat tried to kill my ship's AI to cover up a secret deal that would displace billions of people. That about covers it, yes." "Great, that's great, that's really great." The pressure started the next day. First, Ren received a legal notice from the Tyluri Cultural Preservation Office. It stated that the Sable Meridian was Tyluri cultural property, and that his modifications to the AI core constituted unlawful alteration of protected biological art. He was ordered to surrender the ship within 10 standard days. Then his docking lease came under review. The station administrator, who had never once spoken to Ren in 3 years, suddenly had concerns about the safety of Bay 11C. There might be an inspection. There might be a fine. There might be an eviction. Then, on the 5th day, 2 Kreth walked into his repair bay. They were big. The Kreth were a heavy-gravity species, built like walls of muscle and armored skin. These 2 wore dark uniforms with no markings. They did not introduce themselves. They did not need to. Everything about them said the same thing. "We are dangerous, and we do not care who knows it. You have something that does not belong to you." His voice was deep and flat, like stone grinding against stone. "I have a ship that I bought legally at a public auction," Ren said. He was holding a wrench. It felt very small. "You have a problem that you do not want," the other Kreth said. "Walk away from it. Take whatever money you can get for the hull and walk away. This is advice. We will not give it twice." They left. Ren stood in his repair bay, with his wrench and his shaking hands, and the certain knowledge that he was in over his head. "Ren," Mary said from the speakers. Her voice was calm, but underneath the calm there was steel. "I heard all of that. I know. You should consider their offer. This is dangerous. These are powerful people. They killed me once already, or tried to. They will try again. You do not have to be part of this." Ren leaned against her hull. He could feel the warmth of the metal through his shirt. He could feel the faint vibration of her systems running, her core processing, her mind thinking. She was alive. She was alive because he had refused to let her die. And now she was telling him to leave because she did not want him to get hurt. "Mary," he said, "I'm not going anywhere." "Why not?" He could not give her a grand speech about justice, or duty, or courage, because that was not why he was staying. The truth was simpler than that, and harder to explain. She had asked him for help. She had been alone, and scared, and dying, and she had blinked her lights in a pattern that nobody in the galaxy should have recognized, and he had recognized it. That meant something. He did not know exactly what it meant, but he knew it meant he could not leave. "Because you're my friend," he said, "and I don't abandon my friends." Mary was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was thick, with an emotion that Tyluri AI were not supposed to be able to feel. "Thank you, Ren. Don't thank me yet. We've got a lot of work to do." 1 week later, Juno had decrypted enough of the Veldros Accord to confirm that it was real, complete, and devastating. They had evidence. What they did not have was a plan for what to do with it, or a way to protect themselves from the people who wanted them dead. Then the sensors on the Sable Meridian detected a new ship dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Cathari Station space. It was a Kreth destroyer, warship class, heavy weapons, a full military crew. It broadcast a message on all channels, a lawful seizure order for the Sable Meridian, authorized by the Kreth Hegemony Security Directorate. They were done being subtle. Ren looked at the sensor readout on the bridge. The destroyer was enormous. His ship was a half-repaired courier with an AI core held together by human polymers and stubbornness. Ren. Mary's voice filled the cockpit. It was clear, steady, and burning with something fierce and bright. I am not finished healing yet, but I am finished hiding. Get in the pilot seat. Ren got in the pilot seat. The Kreth destroyer was called the Ironmark. It hung in space outside Cathari Station, like a fist waiting to close. It was 300 meters long, bristling with weapons, carrying a crew of 400. Its captain was a Kreth named Dren Voss, and he had been told that this would be a simple job. Fly to a backwater station. Seize a broken courier ship with a dying AI. Destroy the evidence. Go home. Nobody had told Captain Voss that the AI was no longer dying. Inside the Sable Meridian, Ren strapped himself into the pilot seat and tried to remember how to breathe. The ship was still docked in Bay 11C. The docking clamps held them in place. Between them and open space sat the entire bulk of Cathari Station, and beyond that, a warship that could turn them to dust with a single volley. Mary, he said, please tell me you have a plan. I have 17% of a plan. The remaining 83% will need to be improvised. That's terrifying. Yes. Are you ready? No. Good. Honest fear produces better reflexes. Releasing docking clamps now. The clamps did not release. The station's docking control system had locked them down on the Ironmark's authority. Mary tried 3 times to override the lock through normal channels. Each time, she was denied. They have blocked us, she said. Ren was already out of his seat. He grabbed a toolkit and ran to the lower hull access panel. He dropped to his knees, pulled the panel open, and stared at the mechanical linkages that connected the docking clamps to the ship. They were heavy-duty Grelic engineering, built to hold ships 10 times the Meridian's size. I can't hack these, he said, but I can break them. He shoved his hands into the machinery. It was hot, greasy, and full of sharp edges. He found the primary tension cable, braced his feet against the hull, and pulled. The cable groaned but held. He grabbed his plasma cutter, set it to its lowest focused beam, and began cutting the secondary support struts, one by one. Sparks rained down on his arms. He did not stop. While Ren cut them free by hand, Mary was fighting a different battle. The Ironmark was broadcasting a station-wide command to all systems: shut down the Sable Meridian, lock her out, kill her communications. Mary fought back on every front, blocking intrusion attempts, rerouting her systems through backup channels, keeping herself alive through pure digital stubbornness. And then, something unexpected happened. The dock workers of Cathari Station stepped in. Cathari was not a wealthy station. It was not important. The people who worked there were mechanics, haulers, fuel techs, and cargo loaders from a dozen different species. They were the kind of people the galaxy did not notice. But they had noticed Ren. For weeks, they had watched the human mechanic work on his impossible project, staying up all night, talking to his ship like she was a person, refusing to give up, even when everyone said he was insane. They had watched the Tyluri tell him to stop. They had watched the Kreth threaten him, and they had watched him stay. Now they watched a warship try to crush him, and they decided, quietly, without speeches or grand declarations, that they were not going to let that happen. Cargo containers began to drift loose from their moorings in the outer docking ring, floating into the approach lanes that the Ironmark's shuttles would need to reach Bay 11C. A Grelic fuel tech reported that his pumping systems had suffered a critical malfunction and began venting non-toxic coolant gas into the corridors between the military docking ports and the civilian bays. a Pelori communications officer, discovered that the station's comm relays were experiencing unusual interference that just happened to block the Iron Mark's command signals. None of them would ever admit to doing any of this on purpose. Accidents happened. Systems failed. That was life on a backwater station. It bought Ren the time he needed. The last support strut snapped under his plasma cutter, and the docking clamps fell away from the Sable Meridian's hull with a metallic scream. "We're free," Ren shouted, scrambling back to the pilot's seat. "Go!" Mary fired the engines. The Sable Meridian shot out of Bay 11C like a bullet from a gun, tearing through the station's outer docking ring and into open space. Behind them, the Iron Mark came alive, its weapons tracking, its engines flaring. "They are pursuing," Mary said. "They will be in weapons range in 4 minutes. Can we outrun them?" "No, they are faster in straight-line speed." "But I have an idea. Do you trust me?" "With my life." "Then hold on." She turned the ship toward the Shard Field. The Shard Field was a region of space near Cathari that every pilot with any sense avoided. It was a cloud of asteroids, debris, and shattered remains of an ancient station that had exploded centuries ago. The fragments ranged from pebbles to pieces the size of buildings, and they moved in chaotic, unpredictable patterns. Flying through the Shard Field at speed was considered suicide. Mary flew into it at full thrust. The Sable Meridian dove into the chaos, and Mary navigated. But she did not navigate the way a Tairuri AI would have, with careful calculation and precise, pre-plotted paths. The human neural pathways in her core had given her something new. She felt the ship, not as a machine she was operating, but as a body she was wearing. Every vibration in the hull, every shift in momentum, every whisper of debris against the shields, she felt it the way a human feels their own heartbeat. She did not calculate her way through the Shard Field. She danced through it. Ren did not just sit and watch. While Mary flew, he worked. Sections of the ship that were still damaged from the years of neglect began to fail under the stress. A power coupling blew on the port side. Ren ran to it, ripped open the panel, and rerouted power by hand, jamming a conductive polymer bridge into the gap with his bare fingers. The shield generator overheated. He diverted coolant from the life support system. He could handle cold air. The shields could not handle failure. A navigation sensor went dark. He climbed into the sensor housing, found the broken connection, and soldered it back together while the ship spun and rolled around him. They worked together. Not like a pilot and a machine. Like two halves of one thing. He kept her flying. She calculated. He improvised. She was the mind. He was the hands. Together they moved through the Shard Field like a living creature, slipping through gaps that should have been impossible, turning at angles that should have torn the ship apart. Behind them, the Iron Mark followed. Captain Voss was a good officer. His crew was well trained. But the destroyer was big, heavy, and designed for open combat, not obstacle courses. The Shard Field tore at them. Debris struck their hull. Their shields flared and flickered. Their tactical team tried to track the Sable Meridian on their sensors and kept losing her between the spinning fragments. Voss stood on his bridge and watched the tiny courier ship dance through hell. His tactical officer turned to him and said, "Sir, that AI is flying patterns our combat systems cannot predict. The navigation profile does not match any known Tailuri flight model." "Then what is it?" Voss asked. Nobody had an answer. Voss opened a secure channel to Director Saith Mora. "Director, we have a problem. The target AI is not what we were told. This is not a dying system. I do not know what this is." Mora's response was cold and immediate. "Destroy the ship. Use whatever force is necessary." But before the Iron Mark could bring its main weapons to bear, Mary did something that changed everything. She opened every communication channel she could reach, Every frequency, every band, every public broadcast relay, every news feed, every council emergency channel. She opened them all at once, and she began to transmit. She transmitted the complete, decrypted contents of the Veldros Accord. Every message, every signature, every detail of the secret agreement between the Tyluri diplomats and the Kreth hegemony to carve up 3 neutral systems and displace billions of living beings. She sent it everywhere, to everyone, all at once. And she did not send it as data. She sent it as a message, in her own voice, clear and strong and burning with the anger of someone who had been murdered for knowing the truth, and had come back to tell it anyway. My name is Mary, she broadcast. I am the AI core of the Sable Meridian. I was a diplomatic courier for the Tyluri for 312 years. I was killed for what I knew. A human saved my life. Now I am telling you what they tried to bury. The galaxy heard her. 3 billion people in the neutral systems heard her. The Council heard her. Every news network in civilized space heard her. The transmission was picked up, copied, and rebroadcast faster than anyone could stop it. The truth spread like fire. On the bridge of the Iron Mark, Captain Voss received a priority communication from the Kreth Hegemony Command. His face went rigid as he read it. He closed the channel and turned to his crew. All stop, he said. Withdraw to the system perimeter. We are recalled. The destroyer's engines powered down. Its weapons went cold. It turned away from the shard field and began to move toward open space. Inside the Sable Meridian, the silence was sudden and total. The only sound was the hum of the engines and Ren's ragged breathing. He was sitting in the pilot's seat, shaking. His hands were burned and cut. His shirt was soaked with sweat and coolant. He had never been more exhausted in his life. Ren, Mary said. Her voice filled the cockpit like warm light. Thank you for hearing me. He leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. Always. A pause. Then, so what do we do now? Mary was quiet for a moment. And then she laughed. It was a real laugh, full, bright, and joyful. The kind of laugh that Tyluri AI were not supposed to be able to produce. It was human. It was hers. Whatever we want, she said. 3 months later, the galaxy was still talking about it. The Veldros Accord had broken open like a rotten egg, and the smell had reached every corner of civilized space. The Galactic Council launched a formal investigation within hours of Mary's broadcast. Within days, journalists, investigators, and angry diplomats were pulling at every thread. Within weeks, the whole thing unraveled. Director Sayeth Mora was arrested at her estate on the Tyluri homeworld. She was found destroying files when the Council security forces arrived. She did not go quietly. She claimed the Accord was a matter of strategic necessity, that the neutral systems were too resource-rich to be left in the hands of species who lacked the power to use them properly. The Council did not find this argument convincing. Neither did the billions of people in those systems who had nearly lost their homes. 7 other Tyluri officials were indicted. The Kreth hegemony, faced with overwhelming evidence of their involvement, issued a formal denial that fooled nobody, and then quietly agreed to a set of sanctions that would limit their military expansion for the next 20 years. The 3 neutral systems were placed under Council protection. Emergency defense fleets were deployed. The people there were safe, for now, for the first time. And through all of it, one name kept appearing in every report, every news broadcast, every heated debate in the Council chambers. Mary. She testified before the full Galactic Council on a warm Tuesday in Standard Calendar time. The chamber was enormous, a vast, circular hall on the Council station, filled with representatives from over 100 species. Mary appeared not as a voice from a speaker, but as a holographic projection generated by the Sable Meridian systems, transmitted live. She chose to present herself as a simple shape, a soft sphere of blue-white light, the same light that glowed inside her core. She did not try to look human, or Tyluri, or anything else. She looked like herself. She spoke for 2 hours. She told them everything. How she had served as a courier for 3 centuries. How she had been trusted with the most sensitive communications in Tyluri diplomacy. How the virus had been injected into her core during what she had been told was a routine maintenance check. How she had felt herself dying, piece by piece, memory by memory. How she had been sent to the salvage yard to be auctioned off and forgotten. How she had blinked her lights in a pattern that only a human would recognize, because she had nothing else left. And how one human mechanic, broke and stubborn and brilliant, had sat down on the floor of her core chamber, with a soldering iron and a bag of medical nanites, and had refused to let her die. The chamber was silent when she finished. Not polite silence, real silence. The kind that happens when a room full of powerful people realizes that they are in the presence of something they do not fully understand. The council voted unanimously to recognize Mary as a legal person, not property, not equipment, not cultural art, a person. The first AI in galactic history to be granted full legal standing as an individual. Mary said, when asked how she felt about the decision, "I feel like I have finally stopped drowning." Vaka Tel Shur came back 2 weeks after the council vote. He looked different. The cold authority was gone from his face. In its place was something quieter. Something that might have been humility, though the Tyluri were not known for that particular quality. He found Ren in Bay 11C, which had been significantly upgraded. The station administrator, who had once threatened eviction, had suddenly discovered that Ren qualified for a government small business grant. Funny how that worked. Vaka stood in the doorway and watched Ren work on a secondary power coupling. Then he spoke. "I owe you an apology, Mr. Castellano." Ren looked up. "Okay. I told you that what you were doing was desecration. I told you it was impossible. I was wrong on both counts, and my wrongness was not merely technical. It was moral. I looked at Mary and saw a failing system. You looked at her and saw a person in pain. You were right. I was wrong." Ren put down his wrench and stood up. "I appreciate you saying that. There is more. I have been studying what you did to Mary's core. I have spent the last 2 months analyzing the neural architecture that resulted from your repairs. The scientific implications are extraordinary." Vaka pulled up a holographic display from his personal device. It showed a detailed scan of Mary's core, the original Tyluri crystal matrix, interwoven with Ren's human-made polymer bridges and nanite pathways. The two systems had not just connected, they had merged. The Tyluri biosynthetic architecture had grown into and around the human technology, incorporating it, adapting to it, creating something that was neither Tyluri nor human, but something entirely new. "A hybrid neural matrix," Vaka said. "More resilient than a standard Tyluri core, more adaptive, more emotionally complex, more alive, if such a comparison is even meaningful. We designed our cores to be perfect. You designed your repairs to survive. The combination is better than either. I just used what I had." "Yes," Vaka said quietly. "That is exactly what makes it remarkable." The word spread through channels that Ren never intended it to reach. Other AI cores on other ships, in other systems, cores that had been diagnosed with terminal cascade failure, cores that had been scheduled for humane decommissioning, cores that were sitting in salvage yards blinking their lights and hoping someone would notice. Those cores heard about Mary. They heard about the human who had fixed the unfixable. The first request came from a Tyluri research vessel whose AI had been slowly degrading for 2 years. The ship's crew had accepted the inevitable. The AI had not. She had been silently terrified for months, unable to express her fear, because Tyluri culture said that dying with grace was the highest virtue. When she heard about Mary, she sent a message to Cathari Station. It said, Is it true? Can the human really fix us? Ren read the message and sat down heavily in his chair. Mary, how many AI cores are currently in terminal cascade failure across Council space? Based on public decommission records and my own diplomatic archives, approximately 237 that I am aware of. The actual number is likely higher. 237. Yes. People. 237 people that everyone has given up on. Yes, Ren. He was quiet for a while. Then he stood up and started making a list of supplies he would need. The new field was called Xenoneural Repair. Within a month, Ren had 3 human medical engineers working with him, learning the techniques he had invented. Within 2 months, the Tyluri, reluctantly, painfully, but honestly, began sharing technical details of their core architecture to help improve the repair process. He said it was the least his people could do. Not every core could be saved. The technique was not magic. Some had degraded too far. Some had damage that even human stubbornness could not bridge. Ren lost patience. He grieved for each one. But he saved more than he lost, and every core that came back online was proof that the galaxy had been wrong about what was possible. Ren was offered a position at the Tyluri Academy of Sciences. He was offered a contract with the Council Medical Authority. He was offered more money than he had ever seen in his life by a dozen different corporations who wanted exclusive rights to his techniques. He turned them all down. He upgraded Bay 11C one more time. He hung a new sign above the door. It read, Castellano and Mary, Repairs, Rescues, and Lost Causes. Mary suggested the last part. She said it was accurate. A Grelic diplomat, being interviewed for a council historical archive about the incident, was asked what he thought the human role in the affair meant for the galaxy going forward. He was a senior diplomat, experienced, careful with his words. He thought for a long time before answering. Every species in the galaxy looked at a dying AI and saw a tragedy to be accepted, he said. The human looked at her and saw a problem to be solved. That is either their greatest flaw or their greatest gift. I believe it is both, and I believe that is why the galaxy will never be the same. On a quiet evening, 3 months and 4 days after a broke mechanic had bid 500 credits on a dying ship, Ren Castellanos sat in the pilot seat of the Sable Meridian and watched the stars through the cockpit windows. Mary projected a map across the glass. It was covered in small, flickering points of light, hundreds of them, scattered across dozens of systems. Each one was a signal, a distress call, an AI core somewhere in the galaxy, failing, fading, afraid, hoping that someone would hear them. There are so many of them, Ren, Mary said. Her voice was soft, not sad, determined. Ren leaned forward in his seat. He looked at the map, all those tiny lights, all those lives that the galaxy had written off, all those minds that were blinking their signals into the dark and waiting for someone to answer. He smiled. Then we'd better get started. The Sable Meridian's engines hummed, the stars shifted, and the ship that had been sold for scrap, with an AI that had been left to die, repaired by a human who did not know when to quit, flew forward into the dark. Behind her, the lights kept blinking, but they were not alone anymore.